Well, it's been quite a while since we were allowed to worship, but Easter weekend has arrived. So I'm going to make a little video here showing the route into Coberley Church, Parish Church of St Giles. And it's just a little bit scary for those who've not been here before, but the entrance is this little side door to the left. You can see the notice there, no entry, but we have got access right for those who are coming to church to worship or to pray in private. Here's a very familiar sight, the dog, beautiful Labrador belonging to Janet. Janet lives here. So we go quietly through the gardens of the house. Don't want to disturb the owners. There's the gardens. Continue down the path, and this is where sometimes the wedding couples bring their car, and the bride gets out around this point. And then we go through this little gate here. Entering into the churchyard. You can see the rules for interring ashes. Useful light at the winter time. There's a handy bench seat. Just panning slowly around the grounds. There's the tower hiding behind that yew tree. So walking back over to the path, and not too sure what these farm buildings are used for anymore, but you can see the castellated features on top of the big wall. Going around the east end of the church to this lovely tree, the blossom on it. And here we've got a very interesting grave. It's one of the few graves in the country dedicated to a horse, Lombard, 13th century, his faithful charger. I think that comes back to the Crusades many years ago. Some interesting ball flower design on the stonework there. You don't get that very often in Cotswold churches. I think the only other one I know of is at Badgeworth Church. Interesting doorway. Just have a peep out there. Out into the back of the area where there used to be a manor house dedicated to the Berkeley family, whose castle is down in the Severn Vale. Put this back together again. And just here, can't see very well, there is a plaque that's was installed there in the year 2000 by the local school, Church of England school. And under there there's a time capsule, which I'm sure the kids will enjoy opening eventually. Some of the tabletop tombs, and here's a grave spot for the Reverend Ian Pulford, who served here for several decades and had a real reputation for pastoral care. His grave is right next to the old cross, which was probably here in Coberley many years before the church was built in the 13th century. So let's have a look inside. Entering through the screen, notice board. With some of the characters, members of the congregations round about here. Although it's Good Friday and lockdown rules have eased slightly, we're still having to maintain social distance and wear masks. Singing is still not allowed in church. Some very interesting booklets here, the history of the Coberley village and the church. Beautiful old Norman font. And so as we progress down the nave, we pass by the pulpit on the left, the lectern over on the right. This is where the organ is played from, although the actual organ pipes are at the west end of the building. This is where the priest normally sits. And then I mentioned Lombard earlier on, and this is where his master's heart has been buried into that wall. Although, as I said earlier, the body of Sir Giles Berkeley is at Malvern Priory. Just one or two other little interesting features to show before we conclude. Going through into the side chapel, that's where the ball flower design was on the outside. So a nice little chapel here, but what interests most people are these tombs, which you can see, and the double tomb here is for Lady Berkeley, wife of Sir Thomas. Lady Berkeley was afterwards the wife of Sir William Whittington and mother of Sir Richard Whittington, thrice Lord Mayor of London. And the tomb of Sir Thomas Berkeley is next to her, and he fought at the Battle of Crecy and rebuilt the church. The tomb here is of a child, presumably a member of the Berkeley family. And just recently we've become quite concerned about the deterioration of this monument on the west wall of the chapel. You can see damp has got in, so some emergency work is currently being authorised by the diocese for repair work, and I'm sure there will be a fundraising campaign associated with that. So that just about completes the tour of this lovely old church. And maybe just to conclude by returning to near the porch, and on the wall there you'll see a list of the previous clergy going back to the year 1270, and the first rector was Philip of Coberley, 1270. So that's something to ponder in our modern era, where people come and go and very rarely have much interest in the past. Happy Easter.